What's going on, guys? It's Matt here with the LA Sports Brotherhood, and today we're going to be asking the question that every Trojan fan wants to know right now, which is, does USC have a Lincoln Riley problem? Now, I'm going to start this off by saying there are a lot of things that I think Lincoln Riley does not do well, a lot of things I want him to improve on, and so far in year three, an awful year last year, being 3-3 so far in his third year, I do think that's a disappointment. However, I don't think he should be fired. I don't think he should be on the hot seat. Look, I get it. USC is the standard in college football. We are held to an incredibly high bar. And this clearly isn't it, but I'm not asking for Lincoln Riley's head right now. First off, I need to talk about how ridiculous it is when any of these sports games are showing the graphic. Oh, Clay Helton in his first 3 years, Lincoln Riley in his first 3 years. Anyone with half a brain, anyone who's watched a single football game in their entire life, will be able to realize the BS in that and realize how different the program was when they took over. Lincoln Riley took over a 4-8 team. So let's just get that out the way. Clay Helton is one of the worst football coaches that USC has ever seen, and I'm glad he's behind us. Anybody even entertaining the conversation between who's better, Lincoln Riley and Clay Helton, I'm sorry, you just don't know football. So in answering this question, is it a Lincoln Riley problem? First, I want to take a look at the things that he does good, the things that he has done well so far at the USC, and obviously his weaknesses as a coach. Now, we can honestly go pretty quickly through what he does elite. Amazing quarterback coach. He produces Heisman. He always has an elite offense, except for this year, which is funny enough. And he's also going to recruit the best quarterbacks, the best receivers. Overall, he's just an offensive genius. He's one of the best offensive masterminds in the sport. So that's one thing. Obviously, an incredible offensive mind. The other thing he's done well so far for USC is hire this defensive staff. The D'Anton Lynn hire was a legit home run, getting a champion head coach in Matt Entz. Lincoln Riley legit transformed this defense by hiring an elite staff, but not only that, he realized all of his faults as a head coach with that defense. He was tired of hearing it, and it was a true identity change for this USC Trojan defense. With the new staff, they're more disciplined, and they've just transformed themselves. And we can now leave that Alex Grinch era behind us. And I think it's important to recognize these things that he does well, because we do forget Lincoln Riley is a hell of a coach. Let's just be real. He's a great football coach. He has come up short so far, but you know who else did? Jim Harbaugh did early with Michigan. And look how he ended his career at Michigan there. And so I think it's important for USC fans to realize the future of the program isn't dead. We are right there. We are so close. I'm a big fan of Joel Klatt, and one thing he likes to say is you have to lose small before you can win small and eventually win big. And right now, I think we're right there. And while very frustrating for us Trojan fans, we are right there, and I do believe that we will develop and next year improve even more. But the weird thing about the Lincoln Riley era is the way I look at it, he's had 3 years. I look at this 2024 season as his first year, which sounds funny, but Alex Grinch was an embarrassment to USC football, and he just cost those 2 years straight up. It almost wasn't a real football team because of how poorly they played. It was the Caleb Williams show, and without Caleb Williams, we would have been a 5-win team each of those years. And so he kind of carried us, and everyone knew Alex Grinch was awful. Everyone knew he had to be fired. So in this 2024 season with D'Anton Lynn, it was almost like our first year as a real football team. So that's one thing to keep in mind when assessing Lincoln Riley. And of course, that's not good. You don't want to have your second year one as your third year at a program. But that was due to a Lincoln Riley mistake, which we will get into right now, transitioning into what Lincoln Riley has struggled with, what he does bad as a coach right now. And so I have 4 things. The first one is going to be his decisions as the head of the program. The one that I just hinted at, which was keeping Alex Grinch for 2 years. That cost the greatest quarterback that USC has ever seen in Caleb Williams. Sorry, Matt Leinart, but Caleb Williams was the greatest talent we've ever seen here. And the mistake to bring back Alex Grinch, who in his first year had probably the worst defense in USC football history. You know you got Caleb coming back. You know it's your last year in the Pac-12. This is the golden opportunity to make a playoff push, and we absolutely wasted it by keeping Alex Grinch. There was no reason to bring him back other than he is your friend, and that was a big mistake as the head of this program that really set us back quite a few years and wasted a generational talent in Caleb Williams. So that was a huge mistake by Lincoln Riley. But like I said, he did make up for it. He hired a great defense coordinator, but here in year 3, what's the problem now? Josh Henson. And so yet again, we are questioning another coach from Lincoln Riley's staff. There has not been 1 year so far in the Lincoln Riley era where there hasn't been a position group or an entire unit that is costing this USC team. This year it's the offensive line. Henson has yet to prove that he can hit on transfers besides Pregnon, recruit, or develop. And so in my opinion, he's on the hot seat. And yes, that was Lincoln Riley's decision to bring him here. So that's the first red flag with Lincoln Riley. And the second one to me is even bigger, and that's his inability to win big games. At USC, Lincoln Riley is 4-8 against ranked opponents and 0-2 against top 10 teams. And this is incredibly frustrating considering that USC in its history has always gotten up for big games, and 4-8 record does not cut it, especially when you want to be a playoff team. And it really just shows how far away we are from these top 10 powerhouses in today's college football. And this is something that follows you. This is something that if this happens again next year, Lincoln Riley will be labeled as a guy who can't win big games. Look at Ryan Day and look at Ohio State. I mean, that man cannot win a big game to save his life. As good of a football coach he is, and he is a damn good football coach, Ohio State fans want his head because he couldn't beat Michigan and he can't win the big games. He didn't beat Georgia, he didn't beat Oregon last week, and it becomes a big thing. It becomes so much pressure for Ryan Day. That is the last thing I want to happen to Lincoln Riley. But to this point, he's shown an inability to win these big games. And the third and most important one for me, which kind of goes hand in hand with not winning big games, is his game management. And I know you guys are waiting for me to bring this up because it's really just been inexcusable. I mean, just forget the last 2 years. Just looking at this year alone, he's cost 2 games. And it's not just one thing about his game management. It's multiple things. I mean, how many times have we sat here and we assess the game, we say, why did you stop running the ball in the third quarter? It just happened with Penn State. Woody Marks is by far our best player on this USC team. Quinn Jordan has been phenomenal. And we have a big lead. And the running game was working and we just stopped going to it. I mean, how many times has that happened? And he is an offensive mastermind, but sometimes the play calls are just puzzling. Why do we go away from the run game? Why are we not giving Jacoby Lane more one-on-one opportunities? There's so many questionable things about his play calling. And aside from the play calling, it's also just how he handles fourth quarters. Again, 2 games this year. Against Michigan, it was inexcusable. You were up 7 with about 6 minutes left, I believe, and the opponent's offense couldn't throw the ball. And instead of running the ball to kill clock, to make them burn timeouts, we ran 2 little shovel passes that went incomplete. And it was like, what are we doing? And that was one of the biggest reasons we lost that game, because of Lincoln Riley's game management. Obviously, what we just saw with Penn State. We have a 2-minute drill in a tie game, and we end the fourth quarter with all of our timeouts. I mean, that's inexcusable, Lincoln Riley. I understand that Miller Moss missed that throw, and if he makes that throw, we win the game. But how do we leave with all our timeouts? There's been too many mistakes with not using timeouts, with using timeouts, with not being set. It just seems like down the stretch, I can never trust Lincoln Riley to finish a game. And that is the last thing you want from your head coach, and is by far my biggest question with him. And the fourth area where he hasn't been too good, and this one is a little complicated, but I'm sure it frustrates you guys, and that's his ability to recruit California. Now, one thing you need to understand with this is it is not the same as the Pete Carroll era, where we had a fence around California. If you wanted him, you got him. 1, because of NIL and it's harder to keep these guys, but 2, also because Clay Helton just absolutely screwed us. But what I will say is it's not going to be as easy to recruit California kids, but we do have some resources. We can't compete with Oregon, with Miami, all these big NIL teams, but we do have something. There's a reason Bear came here. And so the only thing I'll say is, instead of recruiting the Isaiah Gibsons, the Justin Terrys, paying them to come here, you're trying to pull a Georgia kid away from the powerhouse that's Georgia. Stop trying to pull these kids like Justice Terry or Isaiah Gibson from the states of Georgia, Alabama, where you know it's going to be hard for them to not go to those powerhouse schools. Why not pay the blue chip kids here in California? Because obviously we're limited on NIL. So use all the resources we have to keep the California kids, because it's more likely for them to come here than to pull an Isaiah Gibson away from Georgia. Again, I understand it's not, the recruiting is so much more global now. It's not just you recruit in your backyard and that's it. I still want to recruit Georgia. I still want to recruit Texas. I just want us to do a better job of keeping the 5-star talent in California here at USC. Anyways, my overall thoughts is I don't think we have a Lincoln Riley problem where it will not improve, where he needs to be fired. I do think that he has been disappointed, but the ceiling is really high. This guy is an offensive genius. He's proven to put together a good defensive staff now. Now the challenge for him is to win the big games and recruit better. I mean, we are just so close. We are 4 to 5 snaps away from being an undefeated team. That's not something that gets you fired. Now, if it continues for 3+ years, then yes, you gotta go. But like I said earlier, you gotta lose small before you can win small, and then you win big. And I really do think we're on that path right now. USC is getting better and better. And if we can just play like I know this team can and finish the year strong, we'll be coming back with a lot of young talent, with a transfer portal cycle, with another recruiting class, and I do think we'll be very good next year. So just be patient with Lincoln Riley. Still believe in him. If he doesn't change these 4 things within the next 2 years, then we can have that conversation about he has to go. But stay faithful, Trojan fans. Thank you guys so much for watching, and fight on.